Los Angeles, a city that experienced the dark side of diversity in 1992 when race riots claimed 51 lives and caused more than $1 billion in property damage. A city whose public schools are now less than 10% white. A city whose demographic future is lost. The causes of the declines of cities and nations are manifold and complex, but the intellectual poison behind the demographic, cultural, and political decline of the West is readily identifiable. The poison is administered to captive young minds who are regularly bussed in from all over the Los Angeles region to the city's so-called Museum of Tolerance. The brainwashing begins here, where museum guests are introduced to a contrived villain, an insufficiently tolerant, politically incorrect white male.
I mean, we're not even expected to be tolerant all of the time, like you're at the convenience store, right? And it's a complete joke, because the guy behind the counter doesn't know English, so you're being decent and all that, but you're thinking, for God's sake, just learn the language, will you? You know what I mean?
Better
Express that. It's way out of line there. I'll admit it. We're all more tolerant than that. Sure.
Museum visitors are instructed to enter the exhibits either through a door labeled Prejudiced or through a door labeled Unprejudiced. But when they attempt to go through the green door, they discover that it is locked. And so the psychological manipulation begins. All visitors must enter through the red door marked Prejudiced. Just as the religion of Christianity requires one to confess to being a sinner, the religion of political correctness requires one to own the shame of harboring prejudices, whether consciously or unconsciously held. Once inside, now unsettled visitors are treated to unsettling images and stories, mainly focused on the Jewish victims of Nazi Germany. Some of the exhibits are designed to force visitors to feel like Jewish victims of concentration camps. In this Museum of Tolerance, some victims are more important than others. There's just one timeline exhibit that makes mention of Armenians, Ukrainians, Rwandans, and other peoples in recent history who were targeted for mass murder. I don't have video footage of it because the area was full of groups of students being taken on guided tours by museum staff, and the museum prohibits the use of cameras. I snuck mine out and shot some footage here and there. I wish I had captured some audio from the tour guides. One instructed a group of students who looked to be in the 5th or 6th grade to report any hate speech or symbols to authorities, their school or the police. The lesson these kids are learning in this so-called Museum of Tolerance is to not tolerate offensive speech. Of course, Offensive speech is the very thing the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment is designed to protect. Popular speech needs no protection. This museum associates with Nazi hate speech even the scientific study of human racial differences.
To your left, you will see illustrations used to support the published theories of scientists who classified people by race. They claimed that the Aryan race, the fair-haired, blue-eyed peoples, were superior. Slavs, blacks, and Jews were at the bottom of the list. Subhuman.
You can see how this election poster, displayed on the walls of the Reichstag, the Parliament building in Berlin, illustrates this thinking.
The implication is clear. Scientific inquiries into human racial differences shouldn't be tolerated either. Nor should immigration restrictions, according to one exhibit which described European Jews who were denied entry into the United States as victims. A top-floor exhibit celebrates the idea of the United States not as a self-interested sovereign nation, but as a global hub whose denatured borders repel no one. Los Angeles is home not only to a museum of tolerance, the bulk of whose main exhibit space is dedicated to dramatizing the persecution of Jews, but also to a separate Holocaust museum. Banners promoting the veritable House of Horrors line a street near Beverly Hills, where motorists go for upscale shopping.
are leading the charge, providing the educators of tomorrow with the principles of social justice and educational opportunities for all. It's what makes this country great, and it's what is great about the University of Redlands School of Education, educating your mind and heart at Redlands.
Elsewhere in Los Angeles, one can find a Chinese-American museum, a Japanese-American National Museum, a Korean-American Museum, a Southwest Museum of the American Indian, a Latino Art Museum, a Pacific Asia Museum, an African-American Firefighter Museum. The city doesn't have any Scandinavian-American Museum, any Irish-American Museum, or any Polish-American Museum. Nor, in my crisscrossing of the city by car, did I encounter any European ethnic neighborhoods. Los Angeles certainly has no European-American Museum. Los Angeles doesn't even have an American museum, but it does showcase a large African-American museum near the University of Southern California. Los Angeles is a city where diversity has run amok, a city where every ethnic group except for Europeans is celebrated and monumentalized. A city whose dwindling and marginalized white minority represents an era gone by and never to return, an era when people dreamed big, built big, and sought to evoke not shock and schlock, but beauty. erected monuments not to suffering but to achievement, and celebrated not diversity but greatness. In order to gain admission into the Museum of Tolerance, I had to fork over $15.50. The only reason I did was so that I could document what I encountered there for you, my viewers. But I hate the fact that I helped fund the Holocaust-exploiting, white-bashing, freedom-destroying diversity industry. If you would like to help me offset my unfortunately necessary infusion into the coffers of the diversity industry, you can purchase what I'll call a diversity offset. A diversity offset is simply a donation to me to help me get my message out as a small counter to the immense weight of the diversity industry, which extorts taxpayers and shakes down corporations to fund its garish museums and sprawling offices and coercive bureaucracies. If I espoused political correctness, I could get paid a nice salary for doing so. Instead, I incur costs. So if you'd like to help make videos like this financially viable for people like me to produce, then I invite you to make a contribution. Please see the link in the description.